Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. I'm excited to be here today with DeAnna and her fan.
Yes.
First, I want to give a huge thank you to The Atlantic for putting together this incredible program on race and justice. Also, for anyone who hasn't gone to some of the Atlantic Festival events, they're also fantastic. I should note before we dig into our conversation around community engagement that The Atlantic has had complete editorial control over today's race and justice session. So, through our initiative, the Safety and Justice Challenge, the MacArthur Foundation is concentrating its efforts on the front end of the system, which includes our local jails. We're focused on the front end because even though there's more than 600,000 people that enter prisons each year, there's over 11 million people that cycle in and out of jails annually. And of those 11 million, 2/3 of those people have not even been convicted of a crime. And when we look at the actual people who are in our jails, the composition, you'll notice that most of them are low income. They don't have enough money to pay their bail. They disproportionately suffer from mental health issues or substance use, and they're also people of color. So it's for these reasons that the MacArthur Foundation has invested over $100 million since 2015 to build a network of 52 jurisdictions across 32 states here in the US. And it includes national organizations like DeAnna's JustLeadershipUSA. And it's our goal to address the misuse and overuse of jails and also reduce the racial and ethnic disparities that exist across the system. We are focused at the local level, partnering with counties and cities to develop data-driven strategies that really look at who's coming to your jail, why are they even coming to jail, and to come up with solutions and alternatives to incarceration in general. And that's at every stage of the front end of the system, from the time when a person first has contact with the police to when they're actually processed into the jail, to how they're represented, to the disposition of the case. So even though I said the foundation's investment is $100 million, which sounds like a lot of money, it's really not in the bigger picture, in the bigger scheme of things. And I think what we're learning along the way and why we're partnering with organizations like Just Leadership is that it really takes a collaborative effort across multiple systems. It includes the people that we elect into office, and it also includes our communities. And when I say communities, I mean people who've been directly impacted. Either they're victims, either they're formerly incarcerated, or they're both. And it also includes our prosecutors, our judges, our public defenders, so on and so forth. So that's why I'm pleased to be joined with DeAnna today. I know she can shed some light on some of these issues, and I know that she's going to talk about how we can make sure that we are being inclusive and equitable when we're talking about community engagement. So DeAnna, I wanted to kind of start with the overall question of when we talk about community engagement, you're hearing a lot about the narrative between, well, the community is so disruptive, they don't understand, they're adversarial to the system. And I think in your experience, and from you running a national organization, can you talk a little bit about what we mean by community engagement and how you're able to actually work with those system actors?
So I think we have to first define and understand that the community that's most impacted has never been the community of interest in the criminal justice system. They've always been the recipients of what the criminal justice system has to deliver, whether that's arrest through police, prosecution through prosecutorial. So when we start saying that we need to be in the conversation, that is not traditional. That's not what prosecutors would say, that individuals who I've prosecuted should sit at the table, or police saying people from the community that we arrest should be at the table. So when we say authentic community engagement, it's not bringing the policy to me after you've written it. It's having me in the room while you're even contemplating what the policy should look like. Because you're going to write a policy that's responsive to what you think is happening. I'm going to help you understand a policy that actually heals the harms of that the crime is actually a symptom of. But we never really get to that. So when we say authentic, I use this analogy that diversity is inviting me into the room. Inclusion is my voice being heard once I'm in the room, but equity is allowing me to run the room. And that's a shift in power that has to happen if you're saying you're going to invest in community's best interests, or are you really setting policies that invest in law enforcement, criminal justice best interests?
So I want to follow up on that particular point about making sure that you're in the room, right? In the room where it happens is a Hamilton song that I love. But just to go on a little bit further and to push you a little bit more, how exactly are you getting into that room to make sure that you're making those policies?
So one of the things that we're actually doing with Safety and Justice Challenge is, because we are individuals who are directly impacted, and we're one of the only national organizations that was founded by and ran by directly impacted individuals, we can go into communities who traditionally don't trust criminal justice. You have to remember, most marginalized communities, the only response when the police shows up is to remove someone. So the police is always seen as a harmful aspect of you're plucking someone from our system. And although a crime has been committed, I like for people to understand this. We're looking at family separation now, but we've been separating Black children from their families for years. And all of a sudden, it's all this attention. So when you come into my home in the middle of the night, some experiences of some of the people I work with, on Christmas Eve, and you kick open the door, shake down our house, pluck my parent away and say they'll be back, and they don't come back for 20 years, why would I trust you when as a child, the most traumatic thing as a child, you were the contributor in my eyes? So we haven't really even broke down the distrust of the community with the criminal justice system. When we go to court, we get arrested. So we are able to go in and have authentic conversation with the community. What does your community need? What are some of the things? And I remember doing reentry, and things from reentry were saying they just need a job, they just need housing. But when I went to the community was like, we just need access to basic human needs of food. We just need an ID when we come home from prison so we can access the services. But the elected officials weren't thinking of IDs. They were thinking about somebody need to hire individuals. If I don't have a place to live, if I can't feed my kids, I'm not going to show up for work. So it was just a two-pronged approach that was not having a solution. So having the community state what their needs are from a bottom-up approach, and then working with the system actors to start implementing their needs, starts to build the trust, because now they know their voice is being heard and it's becoming a part to heal their community.
So Just Leadership has been leading a few campaigns focusing on closing prisons and jails across the country. It was obviously Close Rikers is the big one happening right now. But when we think about the future of the justice system, right, decarceration is one goal. But what is the next goal after that? What do you think the justice system should even look like after you close down these jails and prisons?
So, one, we have to stop looking at policy currently looks at who's in or out of prison or jail. And we have to start looking at policy of, does this continue to entrench harm, or does it eradicate the existing harm? Because let's be honest, if we keep looking at this system from a policy perspective and not the fact that this system was built on the backs of slavery, and that the majority of the prisons that exist were once plantation, that shifted at the abolishment of slavery, but for the 13th Amendment clause that said, except when in a solitude or a confined position, you can have free labor, we're going to keep recreating the harm. And i.e., we're creating policies, and the first thing you hear, we're trying to restore the Pell inside prisons, and the first thing people are telling us is, everybody but people with life without parole, because they're never coming home, DeAnna. But the amount of sentences that are getting overturned, so do I want someone who sat in prison 30 years, get their sentence overturned, but didn't have access to education because they were life without parole, and then all of a sudden they're walking out the door, and they never had access? So what we're doing, we're creating systems of who's privileged and who's not, and let's be honest, Black and brown bodies are never on the top priority of the privilege list.
And that's a great actual segue to the question I was going to ask you. This is a session about race and justice. You just talked about how the system was built on slavery. We all know about the history of structural racism, the culture, the institutionalization of different policies, laws, so on and so forth, that are still entrenched today in our justice system. So what do we do about this? How is Just Leadership thinking about these issues, about the disproportionality of Black and brown people in our jails and prisons?
Glad you asked. So one of the things we have to realize is when I worked at DOJ, I managed the Second Chance Act portfolio. And it always bothered me. I used to be like, second chance? Black and brown people never had a first chance. But okay. But that's the reality. We never really had a first chance in some of those situations. So when you look at the entrenched harm, the 1994 crime bill, which actually took out access to education. It actually paid states to do truth in sentencing laws and actually accelerate and incentivize them to build prisons with money. So that's what kind of led to some of this. The 13th Amendment clause, it abolished slavery except for when you're confined. So we want the 13th Amendment clause. Why can't individuals who are formerly incarcerated, why can't you explicitly say we're protected class? Because the Civil Rights Act says you can't discriminate against a disparate population. So when you see jobs or housing postings that say no felony convictions, no misdemeanors, they're outright discriminating against African Americans and Latinas who are arrested and prosecuted at a higher rate. But nobody wants to say formerly incarcerated or individuals with felonies are a protected class. And then the last one is, why do we lose our right to vote? Why does, in the United States, we are stripped of everything with a criminal conviction? In Norway, the only liberty you lose when you commit a crime is your freedom. In America, we strip you. You are not considered a citizen. You cannot vote. We then have entrenched Jim Crow laws of where you can work, where you can live now because you have this criminal conviction. So we're asking if we're a protected class, the Jim Crow laws are banned. Actually, if we never lose our right to fundamentally vote, we're still considered a citizen, and our only liberty that has been taken is our actual freedom. If we repeal the 1994 crime bill, we reduce a bunch of the truth in sentencing that prisons were built on, where they can become factories, whatever. And we restore educational opportunities, which is a basic need. Why are some people to a basic need that we know? Education is a way out of poverty and a way to reduce recidivism. But we have a law that refuses to allow the people we say we want to reduce their recidivism to have access to the key that researchers, maybe I'm slow, but so these are the things, you're saying research shows that education is a way out of poverty and reduces recidivism, but the individuals that we keep pumping money into to say to reduce recidivism, we won't get them access to the tools we know that would do it. Because what does education do? Education increases an individual's ability to navigate in a society that we still want to keep people oppressed in.
Well, you've gave us a lot to think about, some great ideas and suggestions. Everyone, please join me in thanking DeAnna for today's conversation.